You could be raising capital, right? It's kind of like me. So I'm on the phone. I've probably had over 10,000 investor calls. I just did the math. I've helped raise around 230 million. You could be the property manager person. You could be the acquisitions person. So do you have the time to do the underwriting? Are you the numbers person? And I actually think this person is the rare person. This is like the hot chick at the bar. Everybody needs this person.
Welcome to the RealPropPro podcast, where strategy, innovation, and wealth converge to redefine real estate investing.
Hello, and welcome to the RPP podcast. I'm your host, Ian Dietler. I am a real estate investor based in Sacramento, California. I focus on fix and flips and joint venture projects with other investors. This podcast is about real people doing real deals with the mindset and mission to build something that lasts. RPP stands for RealPropPro, and we are a training resource, and we offer mentorship, and we also have software to help real estate investors across several different strategies. Whether you're learning wholesaling, fix and flips, tax deed and tax lien investing, creative finance, and much more, please visit RealPropPro.com to learn more about our company and how we can provide value to you and your company. We help investors take action with the right tools and training. Again, please visit RealPropPro.com. Today's guest is someone whose story really hits different. Colm is a commercial real estate investor with a powerful story. A story of adversity, life-changing experiences, and clarity that most people never reach until it's too late. He has built a portfolio, built a mission, and most importantly, he's built a purpose around what he's doing in real estate. This isn't just about investing in properties, it's about creating cash flow, protection, and legacy. Colm, thank you for being here on the show today.
Heck yeah, Ian, let's do it. I mean, the goal of the show is really to get people to want to take action, get out there, and part of the tools that we'll talk about today are your company. I mean, RealPropPro, I've seen it. I mean, there's a lot of resources on there. So my story is really more about the transition from the W-2 into maybe something that's kind of morbid, and then the realities of life, and then recognizing that, you know, we only have so much time here, what's fulfilling, and then how do you protect, you know, for you know, how do you create that legacy? So, but thank you for having me on. I've known you for about 6 years now, and I met you at one of the local real estate meetups in Sacramento. And that kind of ties into the transition of the W-2 into entrepreneurial, because when you first leave your W-2, I mean, it's terrifying. And so we talk about meetups, and that's where you can create a community. And the power of the community is when you make decisions, you kind of have a sounding board. So I don't know if RealPropPro has any community engagement, like they post on community events and stuff, but I certainly host quite a few meetups in Northern California. If you want to reach out, I can get you in contact. Also, there's a couple resources all throughout the Sacramento Valley that we'll cover. So
Great. Thank you so much for that. Let's take it back quite a bit of time. Can you talk about like where you're born and where you were raised, and kind of what your home life was like way back in the day?
Yeah, basically just you know, I'm the son of a contractor, so went out really truthfully just being in the shop and up in North Sac, kind of Del Paso Heights, Arden area, and just, you know, really being in the shop sorting fittings until I was about 13. And then when I was in 14 to 22, I went out in the field. And so I always had this access and exposure to construction. I mean, I was truly, you know, digging ditches, reading blueprints, laying pipe, hanging stuff. We did commercial water, sewer, fire, and gas. So I always wanted to build stuff. And I kind of forgot about it. When I went to college, I wanted to be a developer. I got a 100% commission sales job out of college. And I forgot about the power of building things and how fulfilling it is just to kind of reconnect with like your home emotions, which is building things.
You said you went to school for developing. Was it so? So you went to some college classes. Did you complete that? What did that look like? What did that education look like?
Yeah, so I went to college. Well, so my dad was a plumber, and that's why I said I was digging ditches and stuff. So, and we did large facilities, and my dad said he'd break my effing fingers if I became a plumber. He told me I had to be an engineer. So, like most people, you kind of do what your parents force you to do. I'm grateful to have two parents. I didn't have a lot of friends that had two parents. So, I went to Cal Poly, got an engineering degree, and the whole point of that was to get back into developing, but I kind of got sidetracked. In college, you get exposure to different clubs, and I ended up selling commercial air conditioning. And the funny thing was, because I had grown up in construction, I thought I knew a lot about commercial air conditioners. So I'm selling like 50-ton. Well, they're the things that are the size of the school bus. They're called chillers and big old air handlers that go in hospitals and industrial facilities. And I kind of thought I knew a lot about that because I grew up in construction, and man, I had a lot to learn. I mean, there's just so many different things, and I really, again, I strayed away from the building. And one of the things that I really like about the building is you're adding additional income streams over time. And so I get this W-2, I'm doing great. And then when I get about 29, 30, I actually have a heart failure. And so the heart failure, everybody talks about having a midlife crisis. And I feel like I was blessed to have one a little bit earlier because it put me in a real reality check that we're not here forever. And so I have the heart failure, and I realize that I need to do something more fulfilling than just something that pays the bills. And I realize that everybody's really just racing against their bills. You have income coming in, you have income going out. And so I thought, well, if I have another heart surgery, because I had to have heart surgery, and I moved back home actually, I changed jobs, and if I have to have heart surgery again and it doesn't go well, how are my kids going to be taken care of? And so I thought, okay, man, I got to figure out a way where I have money coming in, where if my next procedure doesn't go well, I have like some sort of income runway. And so that's where I started getting into the passive investing side of things, where, if you're making money while you sleep, and so at first I started buying rentals, kind of like everybody. And then when you have a bunch of single family rentals, you think you know everything about commercial properties and multifamily, and you don't. And you get into multifamily. I feel like multifamily is kind of like, or even single family, you could say, is like the gateway drug into passive investing, because you get you go full cycle on a couple investments, and then you're hooked. But I think the key thing to take away is think about what you're trying to create and what's really important, but then also realize that there could be reasons outside of health that prevent you from being able to work. I have a friend who struggles with substance abuse. I had a friend that had a breakup. Both of those guys couldn't really work for a while to their same level of productivity, but at the same time, they had passive income streams. So the goal is to get out in front of these problems before they show up, and get educated, take action, and create these income streams, because you never know, you might get in a car crash, and then you can't work for 2 months. Do you think your job's going to still be there? Maybe it will, maybe it won't. But the whole thing is really like, if you have an opportunity to start taking action now, getting educated and working on, don't be perfect. Just get it going, because you can't course adjust if you're not on course, So they always say version 1's version is better than version none. So, and part of it is just me just learning that you got to start taking action. And if you try to be perfect and you don't take action, you're trying to fix version 1.0, and somebody else is already fixing like version 4.0, But there maybe version 4.0 is not going to be as good as your 1.0, but they're down the road. So, I feel like I'm kind of going into just my own personal learning lessons about if you're scared to do things, you can sometimes confuse perfectionism as a reason not to take action. And that's one of the things I want to talk about today is how to really just recognize that at the end of the day, it doesn't matter as long as you start taking action and moving forward on doing things, because you can't fix it if you're not started.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that, really personal story about how, your health, you kind of how a lot of us go through life taking our health for granted, thinking that everything's going to be fine. And then one day, at a fairly young age, you got to experience something that really shifted the way that your mind thinks about money and how much time we have left and the future and your legacy. So, can you get into some of the details about how you got started in buying some of those single family homes and like were you working a W-2 at some point and then something snapped and you're like, hey, I need to get into real estate?
Yeah, so I kind of got lucky. Again, it goes back to my family, super supportive parents and stuff. When I was 25, my dad says, he calls me up, he goes, "Hey, how much money you got?" I said, "I got about eight, maybe $10,000." And my dad goes, "You're buying this house." I was like, "What?" He's like, "Yeah, this thing's really cheap.
So you
It's in
didn't
a
have a
great."
choice, really. So that's what you're saying. You got thrown into the deep end of real estate investing.
I mean, think about how fortunate it is to have a parent support you like that. So
Absolutely.
the first house was basically, it's like, all right, this guy, you're doing it, and then and then someone kind of shoves you through the process. So that was when I was 25, and then basically every other year, you know, I would just buy another rental, and I did that until the asset prices or the individual cost per unit in Northern California just kind of got so expensive where it wasn't really cash flowing. And then I wanted to look for other ways to make money and great equity and investments. And I had a sales background, and so I thought, well, hey, I can help some of these groups grow and bring in investor capital in exchange for equity. And so I got into owning commercial properties using other people's money by bringing their money in to the investment. But one thing I wanted to say is when I first started out, I got shiny object syndrome. So I think about all this equity I'm getting, but equity doesn't pay your bills. So if you think about it, if you have a bunch of equity but you don't have a bunch of cash flow, it's like having a bunch of muscles but not having a lot of blood. You can have all the muscles in the world, but if you don't have blood to recirculate it, that your blood's your life flow, and so you basically die. So the point is, you can build up all this equity, but don't do that before you have cash flow, because if you don't have cash flow, you can't pay your 2027 bills, or you can't pay your 2025 bills with the 2027 equity check. And that's one of the things that I learned is I get in, and I actually did a cash out refi on one of my properties with Matt, the mortgage guy, he's one of the bigger lenders in Northern California. So I take money out, and then I start creating all this equity by so I helped raise money for 23 investments so far. I think the first 14 of them I had equity in, but they're all new developments, and they took forever. So, I have all this unrealized equity, but I don't have any cash flow coming in. And I started feeling a lot of pressure and really tight. So the lesson here is create the cash flow first before you start building equity. And I know with you, Ian, you still have a W-2. You're working to get out of it. And the point is, your W-2 is that stability. It's that cash flow that you have coming in. And then your projects that you've been working on, all your flips and stuff, those are, and your buy and sell, your holds, those are the equity that you're building. And you're smart enough to not make the same mistake that I made, where I just jumped all in. I kind of jumped off a cliff. And so I would recommend that prior to leaving a stable income source with your investments, you should have about 3 times the annual income. And the reason is your investment income kind of fluctuates. It could be all over the board. You can make Zero one month, you could make 90,000 the next month. And so when you're doing that, you don't have a lot of income, you don't have a lot of stability, and it can be nerve wracking. Like in 2023, I didn't really work at all. I had some personal challenges. I mean, I worked for 1 month, but I still made quite a bit of money. But I only really got a check in February, a check in June, and a check in October. So I'd only got 3 checks, but those 3 checks there was a significant amount. But I mean, I got to be honest, I was kind of getting nervous in May, because I didn't have that cash flow. So think about what you guys, as listeners, think about your war chest that you need. And when I say war chest, the war chest is your runway, and everybody has a different war chest. What I like to tell my investors is you need to understand what your runway is. Let's say 6 months or a year. What's that number that makes you feel comfortable? I have a friend. He doesn't like to invest if he doesn't have at least 200,000 in his bank account. Me, I probably wouldn't invest if I don't have at least maybe 40, maybe 30,000. It depends on the investment. But the reason is now I have some more sources of income. If I really need money, I can get it quickly. But my friend, he has a couple kids, and so and he has lots of liability. So for him, his war chest number is 200. I'd say mine's about 40. Anything above 40, I give myself permission to invest. I don't know if Ian, do you have anything like that where I know with you when you do your flips, it's kind of like you deploy your money, it's working for you, you get it back. Do you have a particular number that you don't like to go below with yourself in terms of just having kind of that sideline cash? And I know you're married and you have your wife. I assume that she brings in some income. I'm not sure, but that also provides extra stability,
I like to always have 40 to 50 just showing in the bank. But the other thing is too that I borrow so much of the money to do the flips that not a lot of it comes out of pocket, right?
Yeah.
So I can get hard money loans, I can get private money loans to do the purchase. I can borrow money from credit cards and Home Depot credit cards. So yeah, that's debt that's accumulating. But when I sell it in about 2 to 3 months, then I pay it all back. And so a lot of times I don't have a whole lot of money into it. So to answer your question, I like to at least have like 40, 50, 60,000 in the bank. But if I don't, and a deal comes on where I can invest with almost zero out of pocket and still make, that minimum $40,000, then I'll do that deal.
Do you have any tools on your website on RPP that cover that?
We do have trainings on wholesaling and fix and flipping and several other things. So yes, for members, we do have some training on these topics. Good
Okay,
question.
I got to check that out because and I didn't really get into what I do, but essentially what I do is I help create passive income streams for investors by identifying investment opportunities. The last couple years, I've been working specifically with a self-storage operator. They have 21 facilities. We've recently moved in the last 3 years. We've been doing basically ground up development on self-storage facilities because we're finding there's a lot more yield out there. So if that's something that you guys want to learn more about, you can reach out to me. The first thing I would do is I'd want to understand and establish a decision-making process for how you evaluate investments. And I'd want to hear where you're at with investing, where you'd want to go with your investing, and figure out if there's any resources that I can connect you with to help you along that journey. I mean, part of that's the RPP tools.
Kind of a hypothetical question here. If you were able to retain all of the knowledge and skills and learning lessons that you have now, but started all over in real estate, what would be your strategy to start over and build wealth? How would you do that?
Well, I mean, this is actually not going to be too much of a deal. I don't know how to say this is everybody talks about like planning and all this stuff, but the truth is if you don't have focus, you can't get anything done. And I struggled a long time with focus, and that could be with managing your distractions, prioritizing your time. But I think focus and consistency of little actions outweigh these big goals. And so personally, I've had, because I have heart problems, a lot of congenital heart problems. So I was born with heart problems. When you're in the womb and you don't fully develop, you also, your body's protecting itself. So there's other things that can develop. So a lot of people with heart problems have spinal issues. They have, mental, ADHD, ADD, and maybe some other learning disorders. So for me, going back 10, 15 years, knowing what I know now, I would see ADHD medicine as a tool. I saw it as a weakness for a long time. And the truth is I really struggled with productivity, and I'm an ambitious person. So if you're an ambitious person, you have to think about the verbiage and the things that you're telling yourself. And if you're not getting stuff done and you're feeling discomfort and pain, you have to think about, okay, what's the lesson from this pain? A lot of times I would just I'd say really nasty things about myself. Oh, I can't do this. I'm not doing well. So it doesn't matter all the specific knowledge that I know about real estate if I can't get it done. So if I were to go back 10, 15 years, I would probably go to a psychologist and get my focus with establishing some like really good, stimulant or non-stimulant ADHD medicine. Then I'd be able to be productive. So all the knowledge that I have isn't executable if I don't have the focus. So the first thing is getting the focus. So everybody talks about, all these things you need to learn, but nobody really talks about the power of being able to optimize your focus and getting into a deep work state. So working on fundamentals, I would work on how do I get productive? How do I cut out distractions? And then everything else that comes in can be done. So it's like, it's kind of like my dad always used to say, it's like pulling up your pants before you wipe. It's like you gotta get your foundations done so you can actually do something. And because it doesn't really matter what you're trying to do if you can't do it. So the number one thing is get the focus. The number two thing is get the cash flow. One of the big mistakes that I had, and we already talked about this, was I got a bunch of money and unrealized equity by doing these things. Meanwhile, my war chest was shrinking every month because I was building all this back end equity, and there was really some financial stress, and I got lucky. Some of the projects went full cycle, but it wasn't a fun time. So I would get the cash flow first. I think I would understand the difference between establishing short-term, medium-term, and long-term income. So the long-term income's that equity. The medium-term income could be maybe something more like a commission check or like a flip. Ian, I know you do flips. That's kind of like that medium-term income. Long-term could be maybe a passive investment or a buy and hold. And then the short-term could be your W-2 or maybe like an upfront acquisition fee on a project. So recognizing the differences and the different types of income and creating those streams. Because if you do all long-term, you're going to die. If you do all short-term, you could be missing out on the overall growth of your investment portfolio.
Yeah, and you can burn out too. I see it all the time. I see a lot of wholesalers get into the business. They get excited and they start doing stuff. Well, all of a sudden you're like a year later and it's like, what happened to Bobby? I mean, he used to be here and now he's, doesn't show up anymore. I think he went back to his job. So, that's another thing to consider is not to get burnt out on some of this stuff because I've seen it so many times. And I'm sure you have as well, like people just doing that short-term activity, just always doing it.
You know what I've seen more than that?
It's not as sustainable.
I've seen infotainment where people feel the fulfillment of doing the activity from learning about it, but not actually doing it. So, I met you probably 7 years ago now at a meetup, and there was a guy there, and I won't say his name, but he had been interested in doing real estate since probably 2010. He's probably in his late 40s now. And I remember talking to him because I ran into him in 2022. and he's still doing all the educational stuff, hasn't done one investment. And it's like, dude, you missed 12 years of opportunity. Like, you kind of missed some of the best years in our last cycle, and it was because he was too scared to take action. And I'm guilty of that too. There's things, I got a book half written for the last 2 years, and there's other reasons that I didn't get it done, but it's like, really think about what's preventing you from moving forward, because it's kind of pathetic when you're preventing yourself from doing something because maybe you're worried about the perception of what somebody else might think, when 100 years from now, no one's going to care. No one. It's like, you're preventing yourself from doing something that could potentially benefit you because of the perceived opinion of somebody else. Like, no one cares. No one gives a shit about you. No one really cares about you. It's what's in it for them. So the recommendation is just get out there and try it and take action, because the first 50 things you do, they're going to be bad. But that 51st one is really where it's going to start to blossom and make sense.
I love, your persistence and your just determination to really make this happen and like fight through some of these struggles that you've had. It's really inspiring to hear you talk about the struggles and kind of what you did to overcome them and how you worked so hard to get where you are today. So thank you for sharing a lot of that stuff. So I want to kind of switch gears to kind of talk about the change from buying single family homes to buying multifamily, like apartment, more commercial type of properties. Can you give our listeners a little bit of advice? Let's say they are doing wholesales or they are doing fix and flips on single family homes. Can you give them a little bit of advice on how they should get into maybe buying or investing into, multifamily commercial real estate?
Yeah, there's two things. One, go out and get involved in your local meetups, because there's going to be people that are going to want to do that. And the second thing is, think about the value that you could potentially bring to a team. So there's four big ways that you can bring value. You could be raising capital, right? It's kind of like me. So I'm on the phone. I've probably had over 10,000 investor calls. I just did the math. I've helped raise around 230 million. I've only brought in maybe 60 of that, but I'm having like 10,000 investor calls, seriously. So you could be the money raiser. You could be the property manager person, so do you have the time commitment to fly out and go look at a property? Maybe you do, maybe you don't. You could be the acquisitions person. So do you have the time to do the underwriting? Are you the numbers person? And I actually think this person is the rare person. This is like the hot chick at the bar. Everybody needs this person, because most people think they can raise money. They're probably not that good. But this is the acquisitions person is really the hard person to find, in my opinion. And then the last person could be the asset manager. It could be the marketing person. It could be the database person. Really, I'd say more of the marketing element. So think about those four key traits. Could you do property management? Could you do acquisitions? Could you be sales? Could you do marketing? Those are probably the four key areas. See if your talents align with any of those. If they do, continue to develop those talents, and then go out into to meetups, conferences, and really go meet people. The way I was able to get in was with OPM. You know what OPM is?
Other people's money.
Hey, yeah. So it's like, I don't have money to buy these places. I don't have, so the project I'm working on right now, we need 6.3 million. It's a $16 million self-storage facility. It's 861 units. It's a 2.3 equity multiplier. I don't have 6.3 million. So we're bringing together about, I don't know, maybe 50 investors or so into the project. We're going to close. We're shovel ready. We have permits in hand, but it's really a team play. And then you have to learn to really treat these other people's money like it's your grandmother's money, and really protect that money. I've left a couple companies because I didn't believe in some of the underwriting. There might have been a misalignment of ethics. I wear my heart on my chest, and I don't ever I don't ever want to have that painful conversation with an investor saying that we lost your money. So if you are a money raiser, understand the risks that are associated with certain types of characteristics within a property. I would recommend reading the book The Hands-Off Investor by Brian Burke. We can share that link if you want. There's a couple other books. Rob Beardsley has two books on underwritings. They're short. They're each about 100 pages. You could knock them out on a flight from Dallas to SF. I've actually done that twice. So there's a few books out there that I recommend getting started in to better understand the numbers. Brian Burke's book highlights the red, yellow, and green flags of being a passive investor. So maybe what are the tricks? What are the tips? What are some things to look out for? What are the green flags in an investment opportunity? I always try to coach my investors on creating a decision-making process, and there's four key elements. There's the sponsor. There's all these aspects that connect to the sponsor. There's aspects that connect to the metro. There's aspects that connect to the strategy, the business strategy. And then the last segment is all the numbers. And notice that the numbers are last, because if the business strategy doesn't make sense or the metro isn't good, then the numbers and the investment don't matter at all. It's probably not going to succeed. And if anybody that wants to learn more about that, they can reach out to me. I'd be happy to send them my PowerPoint. Ian's actually seen the presentation. It's something that I think, yeah, it's just going to save headache and heartache with your decision making process. And really, as you're looking through, I don't know, 10, 20 investment opportunities a month, when you have your established criteria, it will save you time, because you'll find things quickly that you don't feel comfortable with, and you'll find things quickly that you like. So you can sift through your passive investment opportunities a lot quicker.
Man, I love that. So much good wisdom, so much good knowledge from someone that's really lived it and really been through the trenches in this game. Colm's journey reminds us that real estate isn't just about big deals or big checks. It's about freedom, protection, and purpose. His story shows that time isn't guaranteed, and that if you're not building cash flow and structure, you might not get the chance later. So with that being said, we have what we do every week. We do a weekly book giveaway. And so I'm going to show some of the options right here.
It's a lot of books.
Free books that are given away. We got The Go Giver, Cash Flow Quadrant, Rich Dad Poor Dad, Think and Grow Rich, a must have. If you guys don't know about The E-Myth Revisited, that one is just like one of my favorite books of all time. So we're giving one of these away to one lucky winner. All they have to do is like the episode and comment on which book they'd like to receive. We'll reach out to you, get a mailing address, and ship them straight to your house free of charge.
You should interview them. Say, what are your top 10 takeaways from your read?
Yeah, maybe we will do that. We're gonna pick a winner 5 dates from the air date, and we'll ship it straight to your house. I want to leave you with this. We all think we have time. We all think we'll grind now, enjoy life later. But what if later never comes? Colm stared that reality in the face, and it didn't break him. It gave him clarity. The money you're chasing, the freedom you want, it's not only about you. It's about the people who rely on you. So build cash flow, build protection, build something that keeps on going even after you're gone. Your legacy is what you leave behind when you're no longer here to keep building it. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you on the next one. Thanks, Colm.